Good evening, everyone. And first of all, my hearty congratulations to all the winners of the awards yesterday's announcement and more to come. Very aptly, they have positioned this session towards the end of the conference. We have discussed all about diversity and inclusion. We looked at the business case, talent case, culture case. We looked at what is allyship. We looked at mentoring, what are the some of the best practices. We also played some music yesterday. And now the ball is in the court of the CHROs. Well, now here we are to discuss how are we going to allocate our resources equally or equitably. Now, I must tell you that any affirmative action that we take in the workplace to remove these structural barriers requires fair amount of courage and conviction to be fearlessly inclusive. This is even more relevant today. More and more organizations are intentionally investing in the DEI initiatives. And to me, making sustainable progress on DEI is a noble hope and a realistic expectation. An expectation, I believe, that focuses on progress in specific areas of concerns. It is in this context we are discussing the subject of equality and equity. Equity is often seen as the same as equality, and I've heard this multiple times when I address some of the leaders in organizations. Although both promote fairness, one is the means and the other the end. Equity provides equality of outcome. This is true in our own lives as well. Let me share my own example. I have two daughters, and my elder daughter is a special child. As we went through their growing years, my wife and I often get stuck with this dilemma. Are we balancing the needs of both my daughters? Whenever we do something extra for my elder daughter, we often ask, are we excluding the younger one? And likewise, when we were looking at the progress of our younger daughter, we are often left with this question. Are we doing the right thing for the elder daughter? This dilemma continues. But over the years, we have realized that this is a healthy way to balance the needs of both. And by the grace of God, both of them are doing extremely well for themselves and are contributing members of the society. As I practice DEI with our clients and engage with leaders in organizations, I get asked the same question. How do we advance equity in the workplace? How can we do this without compromising on meritocracy? How do we move from intent to impacting the workplace so that every employee gets to experience the outcome irrespective of their differences? Dear everyone, I am honored and excited to moderate this session, advancing equity at our workplace, moving from intent to impact. This is a way completes the theme, include fearlessly. This session will focus on equity within the context of accommodations that are necessary to level the playing field for employees in the entire talent management lifecycle. Today we have with us our esteemed panelists and stalwarts in the human resource management and fearless leaders in the space of DEI. I'm happy to welcome Atreya Sanyal, Vice President, Human Resource Management, Tata Steel. Atreya has been a passionate proponent of diversity and inclusion in her organization. She is also serving on the boards of multiple subsidiaries of Tata Steel, Indian Iron and Steel Sector Skill Council, and the European Center for Executive Development, France. Welcome, Atreya.
Thank you, Karan.
Lakshmi Chandrasekhar, Managing Director, Human Resource Lead, Accenture India. Lakshmi has an unwavering passion for our people and is focusing on enabling over 250,000 people in India to be successful professionally and personally. Lakshmi enjoys mentoring young people, especially young women starting their careers and who come from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. Lakshmi, welcome.
Thank you, Karan. Delightful to be here.
And my friend Nathan, partner and Chief Talent Officer, Deloitte India. Nathan has been acknowledged as one of the top voices of LinkedIn 2020. He's also a regular blogger and has an active presence on social media and is well known for his office truths posts on LinkedIn. Nathan also serves on the Economic Times Human Resource Advisory Council. He is the national president for the HRD Network, the largest body of HR professionals in the country. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Karan.
Pratibha Priyadarshini, Vice President HR, Shell India. Pratibha is passionate about talent development, senior succession planning, inclusion and diversity, and developing workplaces with high engagement indices. Having lived 8 years in the UK and more recently completing a 5-year assignment as a global HR business partner, she brings strong international experience. She is also an alumni of the London School of Economics. Once again, welcome each and every one of you to this panel discussion. Now, let me get straight to the subject. In today's context, more and more employees are wanting to work for organizations where they can identify their values with that of the organizations, where they feel included and belong. It's in this context of fearless inclusion that I want to hear from each one of you, your understanding of equity and how do you see this as being a game changer for organizations, right? Each of you can start off with your opening remarks on this subject, and may I request Pratibha to start the conversation.
I was lifting my hand, Karan, to get the light back on. This is the sad part of very smart conference rooms. I think for me, equity is about fairness. And simply put, it is fairness. And how it translates to is a very important way in which organizations can actually deliver and continue to motivate, engage, and have the right kind of environment for people to work in. Very briefly, in Shell, the life cycle just begins very quickly with even starting a culture of psychological safety. Unless you're able to speak up, you are not able to understand if people are included, how they feel about their workplace, and what their notion of fairness even is. From there onwards, through to the entire gamut of trying to update our policies and benefits to include inclusion, to improve enablement even. So enablement, accessibility for people with different abilities, we don't call them disabilities, is a very important part of the entire sphere as well. And finally, to build inclusive leaders really, who actually walk and talk the inclusion gaps and can continue to challenge ourselves on inclusion is the baseline of how we at Shell are trying to just bring that definition on equity. Lots to do there, but that's the gamut.
I'm sure we have lots more to hear from you. Wonderful experiences. Thanks for that opening comments. Can I now request Atrey to share her views?
Yeah, can I be heard?
Yes, you are.
Karan, when I was thinking about this question, and I thought that I'll tell exactly what I tell people on the shop floor who are coming with their shovels to work. And to them, I explain that, diversity, inclusion, and equity in very simple terms. Diversity is like the ingredients or the recipe, and each one of them have a space, and without one, the other doesn't succeed. And you have to have all of them. So we know we need X, Y, Z as ingredients. I tell them that inclusion is about mixing them well together so that, you know that they are interacting and they're not left out as blocks and they all interact with each other. And equity is about, did you marinate properly this ingredient? That ingredient did not require any marination. That one required a little bit of drying. So this is how I explain my shop floor employees about these three concepts. And I think it's about, how the various elements of the society have to be reflected in the large organizations. That's the ingredient part of it. Mixing and then doing the exact right thing with each of the ingredients so that they mix so well to make a good recipe. That's the simple way that I
Oh.
put it to all the people to understand.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure they all must have really found it interesting to hear this angle of equity from you. And I'm going to lift and shift this in my conversations with the others as well. Thank you so much for that. Nathan, can we go next?
Yeah, very much like what the others have said. This is a lot about fairness. Now, the metaphor that I have in my mind is of a cartoon that I saw some years ago. 3 students, different heights. One was tall, the other one was medium height, the third one was short, and there was a huge fence. And people were supposed to be watching a cricket match which was across the fence. The tall guy could see what was happening, but what about the other 2? So there were 2 stools of different heights which was placed, and all of them could then watch what was happening on the other side. Yes, did it mean that equality would mean the same opportunity to watch the match, but the person who's short would not be able to see it. So providing that person with that stool is important. So equity recognizes that each person has a different circumstance, allocates perhaps some resources and opportunities to reach what is an equal outcome, something that you spoke to. At Deloitte, we are hugely invested in equity because I think if you have to provide a level playing field, we've got to be a little more equal and provide that for people, because that's when things all come together. Now, there are several examples. I will not go to all of them, some of which have been already experienced by a lot of our people. Simple things like, take at the bottom of the pyramid. How do you advance women? Women in the workforce, how do you make sure that between equals, if you have to take a choice, what is that measure that you will add out there? Or pay equity, for example, so important. But although we say it's important, but are we really doing something about it? This is where I think focus on fairness, focus on equity is important. And so those are my opening lines. Back to you, Kannan.
Wonderful. I can relate to this because I use the same metaphor when I do my workshops with the leaders for various clients. And wonderful. Thank you so much, Nathan. Lakshmi, over to you.
Thanks, Kannan and Atri. I'm going to shamelessly steal your story about the recipe of ingredients all mixed together. I just loved it. Thank you so much for sharing. In my view, while equity is, and I'm going to probably sound a little controversial here, but equity is very important. Absolutely. But what is more important in my view is having a strong cultural equality, because that's an imperative for equity to even exist and be effective in an organization. If you think about it, I think, Kannan, you mentioned this, equality and equity really are just 2 sides of the same coin, and a workplace, in my view, cannot truly be fair and inclusive unless both are present. And so equality happens when workplaces don't just focus on diversity, but are truly more inclusive. For example, an organization can be vastly diverse, but if those diverse perspectives aren't heard, aren't valued, there is no real equality. So equity, on the other hand, really, like Nathan mentioned, levels the playing field and addresses any discrepancies either in the people processes or policies, and ensures that everyone has what they need, what is uniquely required by them to succeed. But equality really goes much deeper. And kind of just bring to light how we've introduced this in Accenture. For several years now, our focus has been really on building a strong culture of equality, and a culture where all people feel that they truly belong, where they have equal opportunities to learn, to grow, to succeed in their careers, irrespective of their gender or sexual orientation or ethnicity, age, religion, faith, culture. or expression or identity. And we've done this by making equality our business priority and including it in our performance scorecard. So for us, building a culture of equality is no longer just an ethical imperative or a good thing to do, but it is a business priority. And our research on getting to equal also clearly shows how organizations that are with most equal cultures also benefit from an innovation mindset that is 6 times higher than organization with least equal one. So when something like a culture of equality then becomes a business imperative, everyone from the senior most leader all the way to the frontline supervisor then becomes accountable for creating a sustainable and all permeating culture of equality that then ultimately drives greater innovation. Back to you, Kanan.
Wonderful. Can't agree more with you, Lakshmi, and I completely understand where you're coming from when you talk about the importance of equality in relation to the aspect of equity. And this is where I think we have a lot of debate with various organizations and the leaders in the organizations. And one of the things that they come up with is when we talk more about equity, they ask me very, very candidly, are we talking about tokenism? Are we in the process kind of somewhere compromising on meritocracy? These are the kind of questions they keep asking. Lakshmi, I'm just going to extend what you said just now, and the next question is to you. How do you prep your leaders to focus and foster equity and equality without compromising on merit?
Sure. Yeah, in my view, leaders, and I think you mentioned this, Kanan, in your opening comments, leaders and organizations have to be very intentional in their approach towards building a culture of equality. And as I said earlier, it needs to be treated like any business priority. If organizations want to go beyond mere tokenism and get inclusion equality right, it should not be treated as a milestone, like you achieve this number, tick in the box. It is a journey. And while each organization is unique and what works maybe in Accenture does not work in the other organizations, but in my experience, organizations and leaders can just focus on 3 things to build a culture of equality where there are equitable opportunities for everyone that are anchored in meritocracy. And the first one is demonstrate bold leadership and set bold goals, right? A culture of equality starts at the top. And leaders must both truly believe that a culture of equality matters and prioritize it. They should benchmark progress by setting and publishing some bold targets, tracking, monitoring them with the same rigor as they would with any other business critical metric, and then reward and recognize other leaders and teams when they achieve these targets. For example, I think this was 2016 or 17, at Accenture, we went globally, announced that we took a target. We said we will achieve a gender balanced workforce by, say, 2025. Which means a workforce that's 50% men and 50% women. And we've been religiously tracking this by country, by function, by business, by level to ensure that we achieve this goal. And today, we have more than 45% of our workforce here in India is our women. So that's the first one, right? Bold leadership, bold goals. The second one is you need to enable all your leaders through comprehensive action. What do I mean by that? It means we need to have programs, we need to have policies, we need to have processes that truly support our commitment to equality. Programs that cater to the specific needs of the diverse groups, to the cartoon example that Nathan called out. People, for example, who take career breaks or mothers who are taking extended maternity breaks, they need very intentional programs that are focused on helping them reintegrate into the workforce, which requires a very different, very personalized training, mentoring, career counseling. And we've seen more than 95%, 96% of our mothers returning to work because of these interventions. Or if you consider persons with disability or transgender people, simply hiring and sensitizing the team leaders is just not enough. We need very deliberate leadership development programs that continue to help persons with disability and transgender candidates to continue their leadership journey. Our policies, they need to be continuously refreshed and to respond because the needs of our diverse people are also evolving. For example, earlier this year, we revised our parental leave policies to go just beyond gender binaries, to focus on really what matters, right? I mean, our maternal leave, our paternal leave, adoption leaves, all of them are now available to those that are providing the primary and secondary care versus, gender binaries or even marital status. So that's the second thing, around having comprehensive set of actions. And the third thing is really about creating an empowering environment, which means that people, and I think Pratibha alluded to this kind of having psychological safety. What we refer to in Accenture is bring your authentic selves to work. It means having all the practices that support all genders, all diverse groups, a bias-free environment of, when we go through hiring, when they're going through each of their life cycle stages here at Accenture. And for that, we've actually mandated unconscious bias training for all of our people leaders who manage teams and the performance achievement process as well. For example, I mean, are your promotion decisions being influenced by who's on maternity leave? Do these new positions that you're looking to staff really need location mobility? Do your people feel empowered to raise concerns if they experience any form of inequity? So it's really about being at all levels thinking about these questions as they make decisions every single day. So that's kind of how you really create an empowering environment. So it's kind of summary, in my view, kind of for a culture of equality to life. You really need to have, an empowering. You need to have bold leadership, and your leaders commit to those goals. They need to be enabled through programs, policies, and processes. And then you have to ensure that we are systematically bringing this to life by creating an empowering environment where everyone feels included, irrespective of their unique differences. Back to you, Kanan.
Very, very, very well said, Lakshmi. In fact, when you have some of these measures plugged into the performance matrices of the leaders, I think the rest of the organization is watching this, right? And then, that bit of doubt in their mind about meritocracy, that starts melting away. And then they see this in action, right? And I like the way you said, bold leadership, setting the right tone at the top. That's very relevant. While I'll be asking some of these questions to, some of the panelists specifically, if there are any other comments to add on from the other panelists, most welcome. Anything else? Anybody else would like to add?
So, Kanan, I could almost hear myself speak when Lakshmi spoke so eloquently. So I really have nothing to add. The only point I think is, how do we build the culture? You may have the processes, you may have all the intentionalities, but really moving and building the culture where each person feels it in their bones that, yes, this is something that I'm experiencing. So, for example, when you do a survey, do people really come out and say, yes, beyond this is what I experience? Everybody says that this is a great place. But do I believe that this is so? Is this a fair place, an equitable place? Is all of whatever that we have as processes, and do this fearlessly? Do our people experience it? I think if there is a bit of focus on that, then it just brings to life this whole thing that Lakshmi spoke about, building that culture. Nothing more to add. Very well said, Lakshmi.
And this is what, moves from looking at DEI as just some event-based activity to a more sustainable change. And I like the point that Lakshmi mentioned about, assumptions of empowerment. That's going to be the differentiator in terms of making this a successful initiative, right? And may everybody will be able to experience whatever we are doing uniformly. Great. Nathan, I know the passion that you have towards this subject. Can you tell me about how you have been going about empowering your employees? What is Deloitte doing about it, and what are those actions that you're taking to empower employees, and also looking at equity from an equity point of view, fostering equity within the organization, teams and leadership?
So Kannan and others who are on the call today, I'm going to share a couple of stories. So if you'll indulge me, Kannan. My mother was one of 12 children. She was the eldest. She studied up till SSLC. She was a topper in her school. She was called the the queen bee, because she was always on top of everything. She knew what is to be done. She was outstanding. My grandfather did not allow her to go to progress her studies. And she really wanted to be a doctor. She could not be. She said, where will I find a husband for you, etc., etc. And I thought that was an old story. Not so long ago, just 35 years ago, I have a brother and a sister. My brother and I were born about a year apart. My sister, 4 years junior. And she got selected to the top business schools in the country. She's a Mensa member, so you can imagine what kind of an IQ she has. And my father very, very nicely explained to her that there is only a certain amount of money that's going around in the household, and that's all that he can do. In those days, we did not have banks that. And today, she went and joined State Bank of India as a clerk. And I can say this, Kanan, many managers have come in, general managers all come to her and they will say, hey, listen, you can still do your probation exam and you can. She said, yeah, and you will move me from one city to another. I have 2 children and I have to take care of them. And somewhere deep down, I felt that my sister could have been better supported. And my father just said, hey, listen, where will I find another husband for somebody like you? And therefore, I was thinking that there was some unsaid injustice of some sort. My sister, of course, is the world's best clerk of SBI ever.
Wow.
And I say this with an element of pride. Both her children are people who have done their MBAs from the top schools in the country. But if I move that aside, when it comes to all of whatever that we are speaking today, Kanan, you have to make it personal. So anything that I did, there were no rules. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I made my rules. And I said, I have to create something because if it didn't happen for somebody who's as close in my family, is there anything I can do to change that little small part in the organization that I worked? And I've held that line right through. So beyond all the policies, beyond all the things that you set in place, I always ask this question, are we doing the right thing and are we doing the things right? And I make that personal because you have to make it personal. Like Lakshmi talked about a woman coming back from maternity. What about the person going on maternity, carrying that big cloud in their heads? Hey, what about my performance appraisal? Are you being fair to her for the time that she has spent? So you really have to set some rules in your own minds and you got to progress that. Whatever that we do in organizations, if you do it from the lens to say, what is the impact that this can make, then I think if you have people, you also, by the way, you can't do this all by yourself. You have to create a lot of people who can help you along the way. And you have to find those stories because each person, behind each face that you see any place, there is a story. So you just have to bring out that story and then stoke that little bit of embers that comes to be a raging fire of beyond hope, something that can be done. And as Atreyi just said so well, you have all the ingredients, you have everything in place, you got but you need that fire, Atreyi. So I do think that that's the fire that we need to bring in. So back to you, Kanan.
Wonderful, wonderful. I completely resonate the way you explained the whole thing, and nothing like sharing your story, nothing like a personal story that can be so impactful, right? And everybody, you don't have to explain anything else. Everybody then takes it on from there and they make it their own story. And, that's how, way we empower the others as well. Wonderful. Thank you, Nathan. Great sharing. Any other panelists would like to add to this point? How have you seen it in your organization? Any one of you?
Hey,
Kanan,
Kanan, can I add on to one more thing?
Sure, Nathan.
I'm sorry, Pratibha.
No problem.
I'll give you an example. Kanan, before the world could, at least in India, before India could even think of 6.5 months of maternity leave,
Yeah.
our organization went up and said we'll do 6.5 months. Now, how do you think that happened? It happened because there was somebody who went up to the CEO or the managing partner and said, hey, listen, you have 2 daughters. How nice it will be for Aarati to have, instead of 3 months, 6.5 months of maternity leave. And he said, hey, that would be fantastic. I said, we have a lot of Aaratis in Deloitte.
Oh, wow.
And then the conversation changes, right?
Absolutely.
There was stand-up. That's it. Over. Pratibha.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
No,
Pratibha,
I
go
just love the fire with which Nathan just brought on that, what do you feel and where are you? And there was just immediately a spark that just went off to say, where have I just sort of lived that equity line, and how strongly have I just felt about so many different times when it just says, no, that isn't fair. And we've therefore just got to make sure that this is something, if it's in our control, we do this differently. And very topically, we're going through the future of work discussions, right? And this Shell in India has multiple businesses that require site presence, can do remotely, can do hybrid. And there was a choice there to say, centrally we'll just provide steer, and we are just going to say hybrid means 2 to 3 days in a week. Go ahead, figure it out with your natural teams, and just let the businesses get on with what they know best, right? And much against a little bit of what the management team was in the space of wanting to sort of do this personalized for their own businesses, it just made no sense. We said, no, there is going to be equity is going to be the baseline principle on which future of work is going to work. We're not going to depend on line managers and just their understanding of fairness to say, today I'm going to let you just sort of come just this week, 1 or 2 days. Tomorrow, somebody else, just because the line manager is not open to it, shouldn't feel differently. Exactly the same role description, exactly the job, but not having access or the same treatment just because different organizations and different global leaders, because we've got line managers even outside of India, perceive this differently. It was just not an option. So therefore, we built in equity as the baseline principle, where we're now just going through everything based on the fact that if 2 people have the same role, no matter which part of the business, which part of the space they are in, they get absolutely the same kind of quality of experience in the hybrid model, without going too much of nuances. But I think it was very important what Nathan brought up, and it comes from a very deep-rooted sense of, I'm not going to be able to stand up to one person and say to the other, too bad, it wasn't fair, and go ask your line manager or do this differently. It's my job as people leader, and ensuring that people get the same kind of treatment across. So thank you, Nathan, for just that call for private, what you want to do and that personal statement on it.
Wonderful. Great. And that actually segues into, I wanted to ask you, Pratibha, you've been in a manufacturing industry and you've had global experience as well. How do you see some of these specific actions? These are all very challenging. They can be questioned many times, again, equality, equity, and so many other things, especially in the space of promoting career advancement for women, while we are talking about this maternity leave and all of that. So what are the specific actions have you been taking in Shell, for example?
I think so. Career advancement of women has been a very important it's been an equity goal. Right now, Shell is also globally, actually RDS no longer RD, because the Royal Dutch has gone away. We're now going to be Shell if our move goes through. We're globally put in DE and I now. It's no longer D and I. And so E has started to feature. RDS globally needs to come up with what its formal definition of equity is. But for us, gender will continue to be an equity focus, and has always been. And in India, for us, the journey starts right from the attraction cycle. It starts from making gender neutral resumes, job descriptions, to all of the support that we give in hiring and learnability and the skill fit, just to make sure that we've built in, and now I'm just looking at gender, not just the inclusion and the other elements of equality in it. So we come through from there through to the next cycle of when we get out onto, once you're inside, the performance management cycle, the career development cycle. We have something very unique called the Women's Career Development Program in Shell, and that's specifically meant for women. It talks about, you remember somebody earlier had said, what about the woman that's going on maternity leave, not just the one that's coming back, and how are you going to be ensuring that, she's really in a position to say, don't fear, this is your time out, this is your time with your family.
Nathan mentioned this.
Yeah, and Nathan mentioned that. So right from the career development program, which sort of, kits up women to say, go there, find a sponsor, find a mentor, do the things you need to do, and all of the career advancement tips. We've got maternity from an angle of, it's called Empower. It's a program where before you go, you're given this entire space and then come back after you come back. And our performance management cycle has a default maternity rating. It gives you the complete benefit of doubt. It doesn't sort of get into, therefore you were there for 3 months of the year or 6 months of the year. You're out on maternity leave. We don't want you to worry about performance. You get a standard rating, which is the middle of the scale rating. It's not something that's, either lower or outstanding, but it's the middle of the scale. You get the same multiplier for bonus, and then life goes on. So pretty much from there through to all of our networks, we have a very good women's network in place. We have a senior women's network in place. And we're actually trying to think about a women's advisory board, which now gets into progression of leaders, so that we've got leaders now being evaluated by the women themselves. And trying to set it up in a fairness way, right? Because I cannot lose the equity argument on the other side. It cannot get so skewed towards gender discrimination on this side. That when we do get into this advisory board, we'd like for senior leaders to really get true reflection of how they are with respect to diversity and inclusion beyond some of their people survey scores as well. So lots of ideas that we're toying with, still not there. Our target is 50%. But we're only at about 30% now. And yeah, I hope that several of the things that we're doing across the life cycle gets there.
Wonderful. There's so much that you talked about. There's so much to learn from you as well. I'm sure the participants will be enjoying this conversation. One of the other things, I worked for a long time in the manufacturing industry, and there's a completely different challenge there, right? You're working with engineers, and you're working with frontline people. And, Atre, this question is to you specifically, because you're coming from the manufacturing industry, right? And I always find, very nicely, the managers would tell me, oh, no, we are very clear. We want to promote diversity and inclusion. You know what? We hire only the best person for the job. We don't see male, female. We don't see any, differently able. We hire only the best person for the job. And then for a minute, the conversation stops. Now, how do I confront them? How do I take this conversation forward? So that's been a huge challenge that I've already faced. Atre, this is where I want you to talk about what's been your experience. Tata's have been a huge organization. You've been in Tata Steel. I know how large that organization is, and I'm sure you would have faced some of these challenges. How are you managing this? Number one. And soon after Atre responds to this question, I want each of you to respond to this aspect of pushback from the frontline managers. How are we responding to this pushback? So after Atre finishes, I'll come back to each of you to share your thoughts on this as well. Atre, go ahead.
Yep. Thanks, Kannan. So I just want to paint a canvas. This is a company, 60 to 70,000 people across various locations who are on the rolls. More than 150,000 are coming and going. They are not on permanent roles, but on contracts. We are equally a mining company as we are an engineering and projects company, as we are a steel manufacturing company. So we are not only a steel company. So there are, we recruit for Noamundi, Joda, Okay, we enter a room where there are people with helmets, black trousers, light colored shirts in meeting rooms, and decisions being made. I'm talking of this 10 years back, okay? And they're like most open but don't know what to do. So that's the canvas in which the diversity journey started. And all my examples and all that used to go along. But the first step that we started with, and I personally started because there was nobody else to take it forward, right, with the CEO and cascade it down. So having said that, it's like, it's very important to know where you are in the journey and what is it that will work. So in the beginning, we defined very clearly 5 pillars that we are going to work with. And it started with sensitization. It moved to recruitment. It led to retention and development. And lastly, celebrations. And these are the 5 pillars that we constantly work with over a period of time. The second thing that we realized that, all that training programs, that was good enough. The time for action was to slowly creep the numbers in and say that when we go to campus, we are going to do 40% recruitment of women this year. And that was the first shock that people got, that what is she saying? And mind you, I was in marketing and sales because I have 20 years in marketing and sales and 5 years in HR. And I was saying this not even in HR. And I said that this time you go and recruit for marketing and sales, it's got to be 40% at least women. And we, at that point of time, we were just 4% women overall in the journey. In that journey, the retention part of it, what we did was through, meritocracy, getting meritorious people is easy. Retaining them, we saw, was impossible. Okay, so almost 7 to 8 years back, we were the first people to have sabbaticals. We were first people to have paternity. We were the first people to say menstrual time off. We said medical transition to be paid for. Adoption paternity for transgenders. This is like 7 to 8 years back. Crashes in every corner of the Tata Steel. And the journey of putting the pressure back to the people, when people asked me that, why is it that you think that we should, what is the business case for diversity? I said, you tell me what is the business case for getting men with black pants and light colored shirts only. Don't talk to me about 25% diversity. Tell me that you are 96% men in this organization. So I kept flipping everything on the head. People wanted to convince me that yes, we're convinced, they are very innovative. If you get diversity into the thing, that there's a lot of innovation. I said, please don't put pressure on people that they've got to be innovative. They've got to be highest performers. They're just like you and me. They don't have to prove a separate business case to say that we belong and please take us in. So, the biases are at such intricate levels that even when we talk about it, and even I used to do when I started the journey long back, that, it helps performance, it helps innovation. Till I thought that why am I putting this pressure on all the women and transgenders? There are going to be people who will not perform, but so are there many men who don't not perform. So don't mention all this, and that again changed about meritocracy in a very different way after people came in. But you must understand that when we're getting transgenders, when we're getting women, they are for mines. They are running our dumpers, which are like 3-story long, heavy equipment vehicle, and 15 of them dressed up like the transgender community comes into a managerial room, is something that needs a lot of sensitization. We know that they're the best performers, they're most meritorious, but how is it that you do the inclusion bit, which I was talking about? How do you see that the whispers don't go around saying that, आ तो गई है, अब देखते हैं कैसे रहती है. You know, that kind of conversation shouldn't come back to your face. So it's a mix of things. It's meritocracy is questioned, but when you put all the elements of diversity, I think people try and grasp. But numbers is something that we are highly focused on, be it at any level, and said that no lip service to diversity. Show it by actually bringing the numbers in. So that's the story of Tata Steel actually till now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So clearly the intentionality is coming through. And, you're talking about how we can't have one paintbrush and paint the canvas, everything the same way, right? Beautiful. Anybody else, quick comments on how do you manage these pushbacks? Any other perspectives?
Now, I tell you what we do is we try to get a lot of Atreis in the room. That's a very simple one. I mean, I say this because it's very important to bring the right people in the room for these kinds of conversation. The second one that really drives anything, metrics. Show me the metric. And then all arguments, all the holy intention, this is what I wanted to do. Let me see where it is on a piece of paper. Then it moves. So we bring it. And so if you're having people, then bring in. And we form a lot of groups. Like we have a group for DEI. And for the DEI group, a lot of women, very, very outspoken, a lot of Atreis, we bring them into the room and we do that very carefully. And when you let these people speak, then they stand up for an organization. And then the others in the room say, hey, maybe I should have thought about it. I'll come back to you. Right. And the trick also is not to make people feel bad about some of the decisions that they may have initially taken. That's it.
True. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, this is really shaping the culture, isn't it? It's a journey, like I was saying earlier, and it is often emotional. It is complex because you are really, looking to help people change some of their mindsets and behaviors and challenge what sometimes they hold dear, perhaps, some beliefs that they have or ways of thinking, just all being challenged and you showing the mirror to their, holding the mirror to them in some cases. So, and therefore, to your point, I think you said this at the beginning, Kannan, it's got to be fearless inclusion, right? So as leaders who, if you're accountable, they've got to drive this. It requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of persistence. But it's important that, as we think about, one of the things that we need to be very thoughtful about is when you're driving equity, it's not only important to be inclusive, but also to be seen as inclusive by the broader organization, because, and for that to happen, we talked about this, we have to balance inclusion with meritocracy, or else the organization will experience what we call a perception gap. What do I mean by that? I mean, you land up in a situation where the leaders believe that their organization is inclusive, but people feel differently. Right, and that leads to a kind of a conflict or a kind of sense of tokenism, which could be real or it could be like I said, a perception gap. And so therefore, it is very critical as we, the pushbacks that you get is very critical to kind of front it with meritocracy at the core of all talent decisions, whether it be when you hire or when you give your annual compensation and pay increases, or you take your promotion decisions at every level. Or performance review, very, very important that you're not making any assumptions about, someone who's been on some leave and then, taking a different decision for those individuals, or nominations to training. While there are obviously focused programs for various diverse groups, but when there is a broader leadership development program, how do you ensure there's the right balance and mix and there's no group that is getting left out? So again, at the same time, you have to constantly review to ensure that all the segments are equally represented, in addition to, applying meritocracy. And this needs to be done across teams, across functions, across locations, across levels, and done every day, every time that a decision is being taken. So it's hard. It is very hard as you go through the journey, and maybe, from 25 to 30, maybe easier. I hope for you, Pratibha, to find the initial increments are easier, but as you hit 45, as you get closer and closer to 50, then you get different kinds of pushbacks, about, meritocracy becomes very, very differently defined at that point in time. It's very hard, but, I always believe nothing worth achieving was ever easy. So we're on this journey.
So true, so true. Actually, this conversation getting so exciting, interesting. We can keep having this conversation for a very long time. There's a lot of questions, and I'm going to shift a little bit in terms of the specific question that has come around engaging with differently able people. And Lakshmi, this question is specifically to you. Could you please explain more about how Accenture is ensuring the career progression of staff with different who are differently able?
Excellent question. And this is a program that I'm extremely passionate about. We launched this about 3-4 years ago, and we are probably on the 4th or 5th batch, if I was to call it, where we call it Abilities Unleashed. That is the name of the program. We focus on persons with disability as well as transgenders as well, where we kind of have a leadership development program that's customized to persons with disability, and kind of it is combined with mentoring, and is combined with coaching alongside with classroom. When we could do classroom sessions, of course, we've moved to online versions. But the good thing is we've retained and sustained the focus on it, irrespective of the fact that we're now not necessarily working from our offices, and it's working just as well. So it is a very deliberate investment we made, because we found that we were great at attracting persons with disability into and placing them in not back-end jobs, but really client-facing jobs. And how do we enable them? How do we ensure they also are able to then become leaders of other people? And how do you continue? Then it's a little different. So how do you enable that? So it's a very custom program. I'm happy to kind of share with whoever's interested more details about the program. Just ping or email me, and I will send this to you.
I'm surprised there are so many questions that have come, and I want to assure the participants that we won't be, I don't know if we'll be able to address all of these questions, but looking at the, the energy around this panel discussion, there's a lots of questions that have come, and we'll try and put these questions and find answers, having, and getting you to answer some of these questions later offline, and maybe we can get back to the participants. But there's one interesting question that's come. While it's a very common subject, unconscious bias, but in the context of equity, right, and equality, and Pratibha, I'd like you to take this question. How do you train people to remove these biases?
Extremely tough. But like Lakshmi said, right, if you don't take it on, if nothing great and achievable is ever easy. So Shell launched the unconscious bias, I remember 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a beautiful example. And it goes like this. There is a person whose parent has had an accident, and the father is rushed. The father rushes to pick up the person or the child from school, and the question is that who performs the surgery? And I'm just sort of bringing the long story short. It's beautifully put. And as the guessing game goes on, you cannot even get to the point where it is the mother who has performed the surgery on the other parent. And then the guessing game of all of the people in the room goes on, and then ultimately, when it's unraveled that the mother is actually the surgeon, it really is the classic example of how unconsciously biased our minds are, but it never struck us that the mother was actually the surgeon. And it started, and that was the classic program start for when Shell originally went on to this. And we sort of reinforced it in every sphere. And it just shows that unless you address it and repeatedly over and over again, it never gets to be a reality. So it started to become a part of all of our foundation goals, or the equivalent of that at that point in time. Now we call them foundation goals and business goals. Where under DE&I, we would put in, what would I do to take personal action against unconscious bias, and what would a team leader do for action against unconscious bias. There were a whole host of lunch and learns. They had leaders that were actually leading, champions that were leading this through personal stories. So we actually did a series of video engagements where we did Yammer posts and podcasts. We sort of reinforced it even through supervisor circles, where we have peer-to-peer group coaching supervisor circles, and we started to sort of reinforce that through those as well. And ultimately, we decided in the performance management cycle that if it was above and beyond what you actually did, then you would actually get recognized for it. So the entire gamut had to be taken on until unconscious bias started repeatedly coming back. It would even come in like safety at one point in time was a meeting check-in. We had unconscious bias as what was your unconscious bias moment and what did you learn from it and how do you want to change it? So we had meetings that would start with unconscious bias and then progress on to the regular agenda. So it just takes the whole village in that sense to bring up a child, and therefore you really need the entire gamut to play its part for unconscious bias to come through, and very important to peg it with LFI, which is learning from the incident and how can we actually make a difference after that.
That's right. Learning from the incident. Wonderful. And that's very commonly used in safety classes, right?
Yes.
After the incident happened, and then you talk about the staff AR feedback and so on and so forth, right? Wonderful. Great. I think we're coming to the close of the session. Very beautifully. I got few things that as a takeaway from this panel discussion, and I'm sure the participants as well would be doing it the same way. Couple of things. One is, taking bold action. That's where I think the courage and conviction of the leaders come to play, right? And setting the right tone at the top. And I think Nathan mentioned very clearly, putting the metrics in place. That's very important. That can be really a game changer that will not only propel the traction in terms of the DEI initiatives, but it will also bring in take away the bias around meritocracy and all of that. And, not to mention about how immersion and sensitization is equally important. It's not that never we can say that it's enough. There's a lot more we need to keep doing more and more and more about it. And last but not the least one is about how beautifully stories can make an impact, how beautifully stories can be related and bring about the change in the mindset of the people. And I think that's a very powerful tool to leverage. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you, Lakshmi, Pratibha, Nathan, Atre. It was indeed an enriching session for me, and I'm sure as well as the participants. And I'm looking forward sometime to catch up with you in some other forum or the other and learn more from you. And I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of Avatar to thank you all for the great work that you have been doing in each of your organizations, building this culture of diversity and inclusion along with equity as an important element into the entire equation, right? So all the very best to each and every one of you. And thank you so much for the time that you have given to have this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.